Welcome to the Artist Mindset Podcast. I am your host, Chris Goslow, and I'm very excited to be here tonight, joined by my good friend, Dave Clark. We're going to do some music for you. We're going to have a good discussion, and I'm just so happy and excited to have this going on right now. Thank you for listening, and welcome to the podcast. Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the Artist Mindset Podcast. It's so great to be here with Dave. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great.
Awesome. So glad you took the drive down did you come from home tonight, or?
I came from home.
Okay.
I came from home, and
Folsom,
yeah, it was a pleasure.
Folsom, California. The drive was a pleasure.
Yeah. I've been looking forward to this all week.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, I'm really glad that you came, and you know, it's funny because on the very first episode, I was talking to my imaginary audience as I recorded and talked about how I was going to have Dave later on in the episode, I said. And you know, it'll probably be a day or two from now. And that was like 3 weeks ago or something. But, you know, that was just because I didn't know what I was doing. And things just took a little time. So I'm so glad that you got out. We're able to make it out tonight for this. This is so cool.
Right on.
So I figure, since Dave is a mad harp player, which I still feel, because I'm an outsider in the world of jazz, it's a weird thing to say, but that's how they say it. Is that right? Did you just say harp?
Yes. First, I must correct you. Blues.
But I said harp.
But harp. Harp is absolutely correct, but a lot of people don't know what you mean when. I mean when I say, "Hey, I'm a harp player," like, the first thing they imagine is a big, giant, beautiful harp with a million strings on it. And no, it's actually it's short for Mississippi mouth harp.
Oh, okay.
So that's what they used to call it back then, and so now they just call it a harp.
Yeah. So basically, he's brought his huge harp from Mississippi with like a million strings, and it sounds like the heavens. No, just kidding. No, he's. I think of it as a harmonica, and that's maybe. Would it be? Is it in the world of blues? Do people look at you weird if you say harmonica, or is it just another word for harp? And
yeah, it's just harp. You know, when you're in the scene, you know, people widely have accepted it as the harp. So
right.
Yeah,
cool.
So it's all good.
Well, you know, it's just really cool that what I like about you, Dave, is that you have a kind of experience in the world of blues, which while I have played blues in my own way, I played rock, and I feel more like I'm influenced by rock directly, and there is blues elements in rock and pop and things I've grown up with. I don't feel that I have the same like exposure to the world, the culture of blues, and things you've told me about. It's clear to me that you've been in that world, and it's really cool to have you here. So before we talk a little bit, why don't we just try out a little something? What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it. What do you want to do here?
All right, here we go. Okay, here we go. asking me as saying you wanted to stop, but maybe you're just asking me for how long we want to go. Doing it right now.
Oh, yeah, no excuses. You know, it's the artistic process, you know, and jamming and stuff like that. It can be an awkward, painful, extremely rewarding endeavor of getting on the same page musically with someone else and throwing something together and trying to fly together. And that's what it's like for me.
Yeah. Well, you know, I remember when I was less experienced, less seasoned as a performer and as a professional, basically a student of music, I tended to think in terms of getting it right, needing to get it perfect or something of that kind of oddball nature. But as I guess get more experienced and as a teacher and playing a lot of gigs and a lot of different types of gigs, you just start to get that it's all one big, glorious, grand experiment in a way. You know, even a set show where everything is set up in advance, you know, like with the score, it's all made for you, or maybe it's a play or a concert.
Right.
The flight that you're attempting to take off on, includes also not just you and the person you're playing with or the people you're playing with, but you and everybody else in the audience too.
Right.
And there's this real co-created experience that the performer has that audience people who've never performed a lot may not know it, but the audience is a big part of the experience. Is a big part of the flight that happens or doesn't happen. No one wants to perform from an empty room. Now, in our case, we are in an empty room here, Dave and I, but we're thinking of our audience and intending for them to hear this.
It's an interesting thing when you're playing with a band because you've got all these masters. You know, I'll speak to my own experience. You know, I'm playing for myself. You know, I'm there for myself, so I can hear and play and join in and have fun and experience the whole thing. And then I'm also there for the band to be there with the band, to be tight, to know what I'm doing, to be in the right place at the right time, and so that we can come at this music as a unit. So we're together. And then the audience is a whole nother layer of interaction on top of that. So it's a very rewarding experience when it goes well.
Well, you know what's interesting about what just happened right now was that I got confused. And I was literally thinking to myself, okay, this is fine because we're going to edit all this out and it's going to be all clean and neat. But then you said something that I took to mean, no, we're going to keep this on, and here we are still talking about it. But there is inside of me this sense of it's okay. Well, partly because, A, this is a podcast. It's an audio recording of a discussion that also has music. And secondly, well, I don't know, it's just something that I've learned in more recent times is that you said something about it. It's like you have to come together and see what's going to happen. And to give yourself permission to, if you're going to fly, that means you have to give yourself permission to crash and burn occasionally, or just take a while to get off the ground. I hardly think we crashed and burned. We just played for 2 minutes.
Right.
It's just what it is.
It just kind of sputtered out, but it does kind of show one of the pitfalls that you can have whilst you're jamming. So when you're sitting there and you're jamming, you're with a group. One of the most important things, other than getting the key right, is for everybody to look at each other. Everybody's got to look at each other and see, okay, is it time for my solo? Yes, it's time for your solo. Oh, is it time for you to back off? Yes. Oh, is it time for us to wrap up? Somebody's making a signal. You know what I mean? We're coming around again. You know, it's time to wrap. You know, so it's things like that, and you have this kind of constant thing of communicating.
Well, what you reminded me of is when I first started playing in a rock band, I might have overthought some of these things a little bit because I just wasn't that experienced with it. But, you know, human signals and stuff are not really that hard to start to clue into, figure out who's jamming or whatnot. But before you have experience with it, it's like just might as well be on a new planet with a whole new gravitational pull. Everything is totally different than you just playing by yourself or anything else that you're used to. I certainly can remember feeling that way. But then you get used to it. You try it out.
And this will be a different experience for anyone who's listening. For all the people that are blessed enough to be able to hear this podcast, they will know when they go out to jam, keep your eyes open, look for the leader, follow them, and everything will be okay.
Okay.
No one actually told me that when I first started jamming. It would have been good to know.
Oh, I see. So you're passing on wisdom that you yourself had to learn the hard way.
Right.
Is what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. Personally, that is one of the things that I really enjoy about teaching, is that it feels like, very often, it feels like I'm passing on wisdom that I had to learn the hard way. With like life situations. And trying to kind of help others benefit from things that you learned. If you can do that, which is another story, because you can't always, you can try, you can say, you can tell them stuff, but people sometimes need to learn from themselves anyway, of course.
Sure. It's like parenting.
Yeah. I'm sure.
From my end, I'm going to do all the things my parents didn't do.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't work out that way.
Right, because there are other challenges, I'm sure, come up.
Right.
Yeah,
there's other challenges, yeah.
So, in addition to being a musician, one thing I like about you, Dave, is that you're very thoughtful, and you have a lot of things that you have personally explored and thought about life issues, spirituality, personal growth, and probably a lot of other things that you would have your own way of explaining. But I just thought it'd be really cool to have you here and just have a little discussion. I know we already starting to a little bit here. And I really have no plan at all here. But I do know that every time we get together and run, which we do on a fairly regular basis, we seem to have a really good conversation. So thank you for being open to that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. Something occurs to me as you were talking. And this is like the artist podcast, but I never really thought of myself, and still don't think of myself as an artist in that way, as a musical artist. I love music. I love playing. I love listening. I love participating, and I love it. And I hold artists in a high regard. Like you are very creative. I don't think I've achieved that level of mastery. But when you do talk about art and artistry, I do feel as though I'm an artist in different ways. In the things that I write and how I approach the world, things that I do with words and things like that. I feel those are artistic pursuits too.
Absolutely.
That also live in me. So I like the broad brush you're painting with. With this podcast.
Well, I can't help but come from my own personality and background when I use the word like artist. But another word that might work just as well is something like expression. Someone who has an expression that you have in mind, and you certainly do. Since day one when I met you, you were talking about writing on your blog and I could see how much that meant to you. So that's that's an expression, a form of expression. As I said in a previous episode, knitting or baking or, having people over can be a form of expression. Conversation, this is a form of expression. Not to mention music or painting or acting or all the things we conventionally think of as expression. So I'm curious, Dave, you talk a little more about what drives you with your own personal form of expression in your writing, per se. Talk a little about that.
Well, I think our lives themselves, not to be Pollyanna about it, but our lives are works of art. They're one of a kind, and we're constantly building and constructing and working and tweaking and doing all these things with the expression that is our lives. So, I'm just another expresser But yeah, it's just I've learned some things throughout my life, and I went from having like super low self-esteem because I've had a couple of challenges, and make it to where I am today, to where I actually feel good about myself. That's a feeling that I want to share, not necessarily share, hey, you know how good I feel? But, hey, do you know how good you can feel? And how much that's connected to our mind and our thoughts and how we approach the world. And there's so much good stuff there that we can get from each other, that we can learn from each other.
I don't know if you intended to, but it's exactly what the whole mindset aspect of this podcast is about, I think, is empowerment, your mindset, your having a happy life. And you've certainly talked to me about some of the challenges you've gone through, and I've talked to you about some of mine. So I definitely have always liked that about you, and I get that there's an empowering motivation behind your writing. It sounds like is what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah, I feel empowered by surviving circumstances and actually growing and daring to thrive through some things, and it really gives me hope for like everyone and everything, knowing that, oh wow, I've done some things that I didn't think that I could do, and it was all because I just changed this way that I thought about myself, or changed one or two limiting thoughts that I had for myself. There was a time I thought when I was first learning how to play the harmonica, I thought, I'm never going to learn how to do this, and I'd throw it against the wall and I'd just be so upset. But yeah, there's always that possibility, that wide open field of possibility, and I just hurl myself into that and just keep practicing and not say quit.
Yeah, and that's something I really like about you, and I relate to that, and it reminds me of you and I run together, and you've told me about the story about how when you started running, you did not relate to running, you did not want to run, as I recall.
Oh yeah, I thought runners were idiots. I would always see them running and smiling. I was like, what the hell are you smiling about?
That's funny.
What? I didn't understand. And I had weighed 300 pounds, and my numbers were creeping up. My cholesterol and blood pressure and all kinds of things were creeping up, and I was trying to figure out how I'm going to get some weight off. And I had done some cardio in the past, and it kind of worked. But I tried running. I run half a block, and then I'd be gassed and just forget it. This isn't going to work. And then I just quit. Yeah. But that's the thing. My wonderful, wonderful wife, who's introduced me to so much good stuff, introduced me to a guy who would be my running coach, and he taught me how to run. He taught me how to breathe, and taught me everything that I know about running. And I owe him so much. Thank you, Khalid, my wonderful friend. And but the thing is, even though, yes, he taught me a lot, I couldn't have learned anything if I didn't first kind of step into that field of possibility to where maybe it's possible. Even though all my logic says, Dave, you've never been able to run, you could never do it, you never will. There's a little tiny part of me that said, maybe I can. And I listened to that. I listened to that little voice. And
Jiminy Cricket voice.
Yeah. He said, you can, Dave, you can.
Yeah, Dave, it's a pretty phenomenal story, and the end result is when you first told me this story, I was happily surprised, probably for the same reasons that we're talking about this, about what is possible when you believe. Because looking at you, I mean, you look like a athletic guy in shape who's just like, not overweight. I mean, that seems like a totally different you. And it just impressed me about you, that you had the faith in yourself. Not that being 300 pounds is wrong, but it may have not been right for you, and you took action to change that. You took on running, and then totally changed your life, and you lost, 80 pounds or something like that?
100.
100 pounds. And it's not like, And I think that that is so inspiring. And also, I just really respect how you took that on. And like you said, believe in the possibility enough to say yes, to kind of fling yourself over the edge and for the sake of something. Because that little voice inside of you that said it was possible. And, you know, you mentioned playing harp back when you didn't know how to do it, and being willing to do it and say yes and believing that it was possible. And now you come in here and I invite you on this show because when you play, it's like really seriously badass to me. So I hear it and I just have total respect for it. And, you know, that is only possible because you listened to some voice inside of you that said it was possible back when maybe part of you didn't even believe it was possible. And that's the kind of thing that I think is a good reminder for people that it's possible.
Well, one of the things I learned through this process and through other processes is that, you know, I'm not improving myself. You know what I mean? I'm not better than I was, you know, at 200 pounds than I was at 300 pounds. You know what I mean? There's no difference in the quality of Dave. You know, it's just I am the same person that I've always been. I'm not like constantly running from Fat Dave or you know, afraid of this or that, or I'm very much just into not saying that, you know, that I'm in need of improvement or thinking that anyone's in need of improvement. You know, we have conditions. They're one way. We want to change them to another way. Boom. You know, we start to set about to change it. You know, change doesn't have to be sparked by this hatred of yourself.
Right. It actually reminds me of something I heard Wayne Dyer say that I can only paraphrase. He said something about how most people are deficiency motivated. Starting from,
sure.
There's something wrong here, I need to change, I need to make better. But instead, starting from a place of I am already whole and complete. And there's just, I have the options here to make some changes. It doesn't mean I have to accept, you know, something that I don't want, but coming from rather than a judgment, more like a opportunity point of view. Like you mentioned, being a parent. Like if you look at a little child and they're like falling over because they don't know how to walk, you don't say to them, you know, damn you little failure. You know, it's
right.
Let's just help you walk because you want to walk. There's nothing wrong with wanting to walk. Wanting to grow and be better and improve yourself. It's not only the result of feeling deficient or something. It could be that you just want to evolve.
Right, and if you look even deeper into it, you know, if the child doesn't walk, are you going to love it less?
Right.
Is it less worthy of your love?
Probably yes, but
is it?
No, of course not. Of course not.
You know what I mean? Is it less worthy of your love?
No, of course not.
No. You know, you're not hoping for a better kid. You just want a kid that changes and develops and grows and lives. You know, that's the main thing you want from your children is to live.
Mm. You know what it reminds me is that recently in some of my own writing as I explore and overcome some of the limiting thoughts that I've encountered, started to reframe some of my thoughts from maybe a old should mentality or a judgment mentality to saying to myself, I get to do this. I get to do something. I get to go out and do something I want to do. When it's like, I get to grow, I get to change, I get to learn to walk, so to speak. Not, I'm so bad because I haven't learned to walk and, you know, wow, if only I learned to walk, then I'd be a better person. You know?
Well, you know, here's the thing. I'll tell you a secret.
Okay.
The secret is everything works. Every frame of mind that you enter into that motivates you to do something works. If you motivate yourself by, I'm terrible, I'm awful, I've got to do better than that guy over there, and that speaks to you, then that will work. That will motivate you to do what it is that you're trying to get motivated to do. So the question becomes, okay, if everything works, what's the best thing that I can think? What's the most healthy thing that I can think about myself? Is it, I'm terrible if I don't do this, or I'm terrible if this happens, or I'm terrible because I weigh X amount? Is that really serving me? Or am I better served by embracing my power? Embracing the power that I have right now to do whatever it is I want to do.
So, if everything works and everything is already kind of perfect as it is, yet, you are a choice maker and are here to have an experience, and some things will give you joy and some things may not. So why not at that point just pursue what feels good? That's what I'm listening to you say. That's how I'm interpreting it.
And I'm saying, and I'm going a step farther, and that is controlling your experience. You can't control the things that happen to you. Things are going to happen, okay? And you can make your own conclusions as to why they happen. So, a tree falls on your car. Oh, that tree fell on my car because I was cursed. Okay. Or, hey, I'm lucky I wasn't sitting in my car when that tree fell down. All this shows that I'm blessed, right?
Right.
So you have full opportunity to look at it both ways.
Right. It's all about the story you tell yourself.
And so which one of those things is true? You don't know. You don't know. Maybe somebody did put a curse on you. Or maybe somebody did pray for you and then you were blessed and that kept you out of that car. I mean, you don't know. You can at least say, I've got a 50-50 chance as to it being negative or positive in relation to me. And so now I've just got to choose. How am I going to look at it? Well, I choose to think that I am lucky that I was not in that car, and that every day moving forward from here on out, I'm blessed.
Yeah. Well, it makes me, what it comes, a lot of things that I've been thinking about and listening to boil down to choosing thoughts that feel good and feel satisfying. That, and if you're feeling blessed, I mean, it's just a radically different frame of mind than saying you're cursed. I mean, you're blessed because you were not in the car versus you're cursed because your car got hit. It's literally the same exact action or outcome of at least the car, and yet you're in literally the opposite spectrum. And if all things are equal and it's not right or wrong, it's just a question of choosing the thoughts that feel right for you. I think seems to be, at least that's what I'm taking from what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, And what you believe about yourself is very much your choice. And what you believe about your life.
Which is,
I believe.
It's a very valuable and not obvious topic, because I certainly know what it's like to feel like the things I'm thinking are not my choice, and as if I don't have any power. But the way I'm learning that thoughts work is the thoughts that you're having today are influenced by choices you've made yesterday or sometime in the past.
Sure.
And that our thoughts are a feedback loop that are a result of what we feed them. What thoughts we focus on, they grow, and so that we do have control of our thoughts. It seems, I think you just said that, or something of that type. But it doesn't always instantly work out in that moment, because you have a lot of other thoughts that already are busy working in your head because you've been thinking those for so long.
You're absolutely right. And the thing is it's not like you wake up one morning and say, I'm going to look at everything positive. And everything is positive and everything is great and everything is wonderful and I'm going to go out and do everything today. It's not like you can do that. But because it took you a long time to feel the way you do about your life. However you feel, it took a long time to feel that way, and a lot of reinforcement, from society and friends and family and everybody else kind of reinforcing the thoughts that you have about yourself. So to wake up one day and turn a switch and say, I'm going to think differently, is something that's kind of far off. But the way I like to explain it is you look at baseball and little leaguers. When you got your 5-year-olds out there running out to play baseball, they're not taking 60-mile-an-hour fastballs.
Right.
Right? They're putting the ball on a tee, sitting it stationary right in front of them so that they can line the bat up and maybe hit the ball. Right? So you approach different modes of thinking in that same way. You just start off with T-ball. You tee up easy things. Easy things where you could say, oh man, the parking spot. That guy took my parking spot.
Right.
You take something like that and you turn it around. Okay, that parking spot wasn't meant for me. The parking spot that's meant for me is around here somewhere. I guess that obviously wasn't it. I'll go a-searching. And then you can just take the easy things in your life that can send you negative and see if you can turn them positive.
Yeah, I think it's a great example, and what I hear you saying is that there's always an opportunity, but start with the simple things to reframe. That's what I hear you saying, because I personally know what it's like to have a default that frames things in a very negative light. Usually something bad about me that my brain would, especially in the recent past, would spit at me. Now I'm starting to reframe these things better, and I also have seen the value of taking it case by case. You take that parking spot, and simply by learning to see and actually believe, maybe it's better that I wasn't meant for that parking spot, or, now I get to go look somewhere else. When you can literally start to shift an old habit that might have been with you for 10, 20, 30 plus years, which is no easy thing. But if you just start with those little things, little by little, you start to push the pile in a different direction and start something new. It's not easy, though. And we're talking about habits. Habits of thought are so powerful that they run us. The good news is, who's the person who first started the program that became the habit? It's us. We were the ones who started these habits in the first place. But people forget that, and they start to forget that they have agency in this process. What you're talking about can give a person back with a simple little daily example. Give your own sense of agency with stuff you can actually control, which is the equivalent of T-ball. Just simple stuff.
Yeah, just easy stuff, rather than, take that left turn towards self-loathing, take that right turn towards being positive. And it's not, I don't think of myself as an optimist. I don't think that I turn things that are negative to positive. I think what I do is I see the intrinsic positivity of everything, of existence, right? The ultimate on or off. Is it good that we're here or not? I say, I choose to believe that existence in and of itself is good because I'm here and everything is here and we're experiencing things. And I choose to believe that ultimately life and everything in it and everything around it is good. There are bad things that happen in it, certainly, and there's different conditions, but I think my foundation is the belief that life is good.
Very interesting. It's interesting as I'm following your train of thought the best I can, and I'm just imagining someone listening. You said, start with something small, and then you made a very big and universal statement, which even sometimes my brain, it's still working with its own negativity around, because I've recently been thinking about something similar, and it was another Wayne Dyer recording, and I heard him saying, sort of something, it comes down to the question of whether you think that life and people around you are basically good and positive and helpful, or do you basically think that they are not? And that whole... the answer to that question...
It's just for a program, I did not steal that from Wayne Dyer.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think you did. I'm sure many people have said it, but the point is, I've been thinking about this too, and it was a revelation. It's so funny how our thoughts can be, because I always think of myself as a basically positive person who wants to continually grow and empower myself. Yet to realize that I had to actually kind of ask myself that question. And I think a fundamental question that some people need to kind of delve into is just the question that you answered so eloquently for yourself. And yet, I wouldn't take it for granted that some people, we've been raised with something else very often.
Sure. We live in a society where it's a consumer, capitalist kind of society where you've got to bring things in from the outside to make you happy and to fulfill you. So that means that you must be empty until you get something to fill you up. That's kind of the cultural default. But in a really large sense, how I reconcile this everything is good is that science and religion seem to be at odds a lot, but they agree on one thing, that there was a beginning, right? So there was some start. Science, they say, it was a big bang. And, in other religions, deities spoke the universe into beginning. But either way, there's a start. And before that start, we don't really know what, neither one knows what was around or what things looked like before that beginning began, right? So I look at it like this. From that first instant that the universe began, that first tiny, tiny spark, or major, huge spark, or whatever it was, in that little tiny kernel, is that good or bad? That little tiny beginning.
Well, I would think it fair to say that you could say that was good.
Sure, it's a choice, right?
Yeah.
You could say, it was bad. It was the beginning of everything and horrible. Or you could choose to say, okay, the beginning of all existence, I'll call that good.
Yeah. Yeah. Because without the beginning of all existence, there couldn't be all the good things that are in life.
Right.
We would, call it good or bad, but you wouldn't have anything if you didn't have that beginning.
Right. We wouldn't have the possibility for anything if we didn't have a playground to play on.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So right there, that little tiny bit I call good. And so from that very beginning, chemical reactions, the planets and universe, or planets and galaxies and everything spewed out of that, right? So then we have the universe as it is today. But as the universe kind of grew from however it began, at what point in that growth did things start to turn bad?
I don't know. My first thought would be to say they didn't, but that it was just a matter of perspective or people seeing it that way.
I mean, before there were people, before at the very beginning of existence, before there were people, before there were anything, when was there any bad thing happening, or was it just change and growth and explosions and planets? And
well, Shakespeare said, "Nothing is good or bad, but people think it's so." To paraphrase him, I don't think there was. It wasn't good or bad. It was, like you said, it was just change and growth and planets and things.
Right. So you fast forward to present day, where the universe is still growing, expanding, still in the middle of its beginning, right? Science tells us that the universe is still pushing out and growing.
Right.
Where has bad arisen? In the vastness of the universe, where does bad begin? And it begins, I believe, in our mind.
Yeah.
As soon as we determine that something's bad, that's bad.
Right.
And then we determine that it's bad. We say that it's bad. But we're claiming that a condition is bad in this vast, wonderful, beautiful, positive, loving universe. So if one thing is good, it all has to be good.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to hear it from this point of view. And I can certainly see where you're coming from. I guess it's all a matter of perspective. Because
sure.
If you have a 3-year-old whose ice cream cone fell on the ground, I think they would think of it as bad, and their instincts are to cry or feel bad.
Right.
And it may be that the human tendency to call things good or bad comes from instincts like that, certain reactions that are either fear or loss, or fear of loss, or fear of pain.
Right. But think of the child. But think of that child. That's a great example. The 3-year-old is like, okay, the ice cream's on the ground. This is terrible. There's a brand new ice cream cone and it's on the ground. You're never going to get another ice cream cone again. And they're driven to tears. They're inconsolable, right? But the parent, what's the parent do? The parent's like, this is no big deal.
We'll buy another one, or there's more.
Or we'll get another one. We'll clean this up, or we'll whatever. But the adult, the parent, knows that this is not the end of the world. No matter how bad the child thinks it is, the parent knows it's not that bad. And so
it's a matter of perspective.
Exactly, it's a matter of perspective. So, is there a perspective that we can look at our lives and think, hey, you know what? We can survive this. What's happening now? Maybe it's not as bad as we think, and we can overcome whatever it is that's in front of us.
Right, which goes back to something you said earlier about just how you interpret the parking spot or whatever. If you can reframe it, and like a car crashing into a tree, maybe the tree crashing into the car, it's a blessing that you were not in the car. Or it could be a curse, but it's just a question of how you look at it. If you expand out far enough, or if your parents are probably grateful you weren't in the car. They're not. They see it as a blessing. They might be mad about the car, but they're probably more grateful. You might be kicking yourself about it, but it's what's interesting is how the human mind will invent these stories. And I personally know what it's like from childhood of inventing a bunch of negative stories.
Sure.
The equivalent, it's just an analogy, but if the tree crashed on my car and I decided I don't deserve to have a car, the universe doesn't like me, or this was just kind of a simplification of some of the kinds of stories that I could tell myself. And when the human mind is so capable of telling and then believing and retelling these stories over and over again, the amazing thing is that we have the capacity to reframe, like you're saying, and look at it from a different perspective. But it takes stepping out of your normal habitual thought process and doing it in order to do so. Because like Einstein said, you can't solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that started the problem in the first place.
Sure.
And just for a quick second, if we bring this back to being an artist, by the way, this is all totally related. Also, what you talk about when you're talking about whether it's learning harmonica or learning or running or good exercise habits or getting out and getting gigs or being more creative, it starts with a willingness to step out of your normal habitual thought process, which didn't allow you to do those things, and presumably, to a bigger view of yourself, which does. And it's the same exact thing no matter what you're doing in life. And it comes down to an empowered point of view. Like you were saying, the idea that life is good. Well, that opens up so many possibilities, because if life is good, life is an opportunity, life is in front of me, life is beckoning me, life is encouraging me, there is help available. People want to help me. I need only get clear and then ask for what I want. Or there's so many, automatically you start spiraling in a positive direction when you start from that premise.
Yeah. When you think the universe is here to support and love you, it changes your perspective. It changes what you think you can do in your own life, and it can empower you. Now, look, I wrestle, with thoughts and everything, but I think the difference in my life, for me, as I've kind of grown and started to feel more comfortable in my own skin, is there's no reason to tear myself down. It doesn't help anything.
Yeah.
And I used to think it did help.
Yeah, that's the old paradigm. It's the modeling that somewhere along the way you got the crazy notion that beating yourself up is somehow helpful, or that kind of idea.
Sure. It's kind of the Listerine syndrome. I saw a commercial for Listerine on a TV the other day, and it's this new Listerine. You remember the old Listerine? It was like green. It was kind of the color of urine, and then you put it in your mouth, and then it would just like destroy your mouth with with pain, because it was in there. It's kind of like alcohol based or something. So it was just in there tearing up all the germs and everything.
You make it sound so great. Yeah.
But see, there was an element of it that was great, because the pain that you endured, it meant something. It meant that you're killing germs in your mouth. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, this is painful, but oh man, my mouth is going to be so fresh after this. You accomplished something. And so when I saw that commercial for a new Listerine that doesn't hurt at all, I kind of like scoffed at it. I was like, oh, people are such babies. They're such wimps.
Huh.
But here's the thing. That's a value I was putting on pain.
Yeah.
I put a value on that. I figure, okay, well, they're wimps. They can't deal with the pain. When, in actuality, if you want to kill germs in your mouth, you don't have to endure all of that pain of original Listerine in order to do it. Right. You don't have to. You don't have to have that pain, and you can be just as effective. So there's a little lesson for me. I kind of was like, oh, wow, Dave, you're kind of a jerk.
Well, it's clearly a different demographic. Both demographics have mouths, but their philosophy about how, no pain, no gain, no pain, lots of gain. It's just reverse of the same kind of elements there.
Right. So if I beat myself up, ultimately I'm going to profit from that, because, that's good, right? Pain is good. It's good for me to beat myself up. That makes a good artist.
Which, by the way, yeah, it totally reminds me of a lot of the philosophy of traditional art. For me as a classically trained musician, the idea of the student in the practice room for 6 hours a day, 10 hours a day, their whole life hunched over, getting scoliosis and like hand problems and no friends, and this sort of this idea of pain as a price that you pay for greatness. While it's true that you have to pay a price for great skill, it's certainly true. The idea of the focus on the pain of it, for example, as just coming with the territory, the sort of miserable artist myth.
Right.
I certainly don't subscribe to that. It feels like what we're talking about. And a lot of the things I read about and hear about and listen to and so forth comes down to the opposite of that idea that pain and gain are intrinsically linked. I personally know what it's like to burn out from too much pain and not enough gain, and it didn't work for me. So what has worked for me is a much more of a, I'd say, joy philosophy, happiness, what feels good, being positively motivated. At least
and good for you for realizing what doesn't work. I've had things that I realized it wasn't working, but then it's years down the road when I'm ultimately ready to, make a change. I'll see something that's not working for a long time. That's the way I used to do it way back in the day. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with seeing how your life is going and then wanting to adjust.
Course corrections are really what life is. I mean, think about it. If we're all on a journey, cosmic journey, literally floating through space, in a conceptual sense, you just kind of keep making course corrections. As you grow in awareness, you make a change here, you make a change there, and you're I don't even remember what you just said that spawned me to say this, but it just seems to me that life is an unending open book of new possibility that is always available to you to make a change, learn more out of your growing awareness, make some change. Now, even if you've, like you just said, something you might have settled for years and you didn't make any better, but it's always available to make it better.
Sure, yes.
It's just, and you'll get there eventually. I think one thing that I used to struggle with was this idea that we better achieve some greatness or else we're, being judged or something. While I wasn't raised in a religious, judgmental kind of a household, it kind of reminds me of that kind of idea of like a judgmental God that you have to get something done or else. And I used to be like that. Speaking of being a jerk, I used to be like that. I used to be that judgmental God who wasn't really a God, just staying in my own bedroom or whatever, but still had those judgments of other people and definitely of myself, big time. But over time, I started to realize we'll get there eventually. Taking on a new idea. I may see someone who seems to be hitting their head against the wall repeatedly. I used to be prone to judgment of that if I saw that. But nowadays, my attitude has changed a lot. I think usually I'll see that person, I might have a moment of judgment, but then I'm like, well, I kind of did that once too. I've been there, and that person has a lot of other good qualities, and I can, like we were talking about, sort of reframe and see, instead of judgment, it's more like, well, it's just the beginning of a process. This person hasn't yet gone through enough pain, running their head against the wall, that they have decided they're done with it. Once you go through enough pain with something that is not working, you will change.
Sure.
And it might take a lot to get there. And it depends on the person and how long it takes or how much pain it takes. Some people, they die a long, slow death of slow drip pain and it takes a long time. But some of us, we get a nuclear bomb of pain that we deal with for 5-10 years, and then we are done. Never again am I going to let myself go through this. And yes, I am probably talking about myself, because by the time I was 20, I was so out of whack, and I knew it. I was so in pain that I knew I had to change who I was going to be and start to find answers to empower myself. But no matter how it works out for someone, I now think to myself, well, we're all growing and evolving. We'll get it eventually. This person will get it eventually.
Yeah, it's just have hope for one another, and who knows, maybe we can help each other.
Maybe we are here to help each other. Maybe we're part of the good that is the universe.
Maybe.
Maybe we are part of the universe.
Who knows? You know, what would it hurt to think that? What would it hurt to live that?
Yeah, totally. It is a good discussion, Dave. And thank you for having it. As we're sitting here in this hot room, it's still like 80 degrees outside or 75 or something, and I turned off the air conditioner because I didn't want the heat or the sound to infect our beautiful sound space here.
Well, that's how much you care. That's how much you care. You will keep us in the sweat box. For the sake of the people out there, they need clean audio. I know how important that is.
Well, yes, I am a musician, so I'm an audiophile to the core. Even if I'm not a great engineer, but hey, I got the Tascam, I got the iMac, we're all good. We'll make it work. So I just want to say it's really cool to hear your ideas and the positivity with which you come at them and the thought you've brought to it. And I definitely extend the invitation to have you back for more when you would like to. We can have more discussion.
I would love to come back. Yeah.
Awesome. So what do you say we conclude with another little jam?
Sounds good. So yeah, let's do some blues. You can pick the tempo, if whatever you want to make.
Okay, yeah. So